Some called Martin Luther King Jr. a visionary. Others called him a troublemaker. For Canon Lloyd Casson, he was a man of action who was determined to dismantle racial injustice wherever it existed.
Righteous anger, righteous indignation, I think, is an appropriate force to use in proclaiming the good news of Jesus Christ for the world. Even Dr. King, it must be understood, I mean, he came right out of the religious community, but always had some allies. I think that there were some who got afraid of and didn't want to go as far as he did. Martin, slow down, you know, take your time. And he would say, time? Now's the time, you know.
The world was different when Casson was growing up in Wilmington.
All the education I had before college and the Army was in the segregated institutions.
Life, he says, was pretty ordinary, so he thought. So the division between black and white students didn't seem odd to him until he started seeing segregation differently.
The idea of going into Woolworths, where Happy Harry's is now, at 9th and Market, to sit at a counter for a soda or something, absolutely out of the question.
Over time, he came to understand that segregation was a system designed to perpetuate inferiority and demoralize black people.
I think my worst experience was when I was in the Army, and I had been at Aberdeen Proving Grounds, Maryland, and then I was assigned to go to Camp Pickett, Virginia, Blackstone, Virginia. And I had not ridden trains very much before that, except the local to Philadelphia, almost as a ride, you know what I mean? But I'll never forget that when I boarded the train in Wilmington, we got down to Washington, and I had to get off the train and go to the back of the train, where all the black people were. In other words, from D.C. down, it was total segregation.
As a teenager, one of the places he saw signs of opposition against segregation was in the church.
I still remember the first time coming into this church. And I still remember Father Marmion, the rector, I still remember this, asking me if I would read one of the lessons for evening prayer. And I think it was a statement he was trying to make, and I didn't really get it at that. But I read the lesson.
The Episcopal Church of St. Andrews was initially the white church. Casson belonged to the black church, St. Matthew. But little did he know that the two churches would unite, and he would be a part of the transformation.
I fought in this church, along with others, many others, black clergy particularly, for justice within the church. I mean, we confronted our own church with its racism. And I do it today, where I find it, and I still find it.
And during the 60s, he found that racism embedded in many institutions.
Education, inadequate health care, segregated housing and poor housing. This was not a good situation back in the 60s.
Leaders of the civil rights movement were battling some of the same issues, and Martin Luther King Jr.'s leadership style inspired Casson.
Martin Luther King was smart. When this March on Washington, he wanted to show that this was not just a black-white issue, and saying, to poor white people and the Indians and so on, you got the same problem. It's not, these black people are not your problem. You're all in the same boat.
But King's influence would be snuffed out by an assassin's bullet in '68. A heartbroken Casson vowed not to give up.
I can tell you this, when he was assassinated, I decided that I was going to be one of those who picked up his mantle. I mean, that was a conscious decision. Dr. King helped me to understand what it really means to be a preacher, a witness for the gospel, because he did not play. He meant it. He was serious about it.
Free at last, free at